this episode is about the difference between perception and reality of us achieving things. Is that right?
Yes, that's a lovely, because it's relevant to everyone.
Sure. Including you and including me. Everyone.
Especially, yeah, absolutely.
Wait,
so have we started?
Yeah, about 16 minutes ago, Matt.
Okay, fine. Okay, good. I did see the recording, but you.
So bring your A game about now.
Ready.
I'll maybe cut this bit and just put a little apology in for absent Matt, and then
he's here.
Here he is.
Sasha Fierce, my alter ego, is ready.
Do you know what I'd really love to do is come up with drag queen names? Because a friend of mine, I know that's not very original, but a friend of mine and I, we often get together when we're both creative people, as in we have creative jobs. And when we just need like some brain space, we like text each other and say, "Are you free? Not yet. Are you free yet?" And when we find out that little moment where we're both free, we spend 30 minutes coming up with made up business names.
Do you start with the name and then retrofit it?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So I came up with Stitches for Snitches, which I thought would be a really good name for a bar, like a bit kind of rough and ready,
Yes.
But then equally, I thought, and I even went to the Advertising Standards Agency. I have the most amazing email from the Advertising Standards Agency that I can't read on this public forum because the language is so obscene in it. But I said, I really want a business called Fuck Me, Frank. Right. So
I thought you said you couldn't read it.
No, that when she came back and said, and it said in the email subject line, it's something like warning contains explicit. And so she's giving me examples and saying, some words are socially unacceptable, like the C word, but spells it out. And I'm like, oh, we're there. Okay.
What would Fuck Me Frank sell or produce or do?
I don't know, and I don't really care because I just really like it.
Is it to do with Frankfurters?
Oh, could be. There you go. Could be. Oh, I don't know. That's a little sexual for food, though, isn't it? Probably not. I don't know if I would. No, I don't think we should encourage that. That's a fast track to cystitis. So anyway, so that's a fun thing we did. And then you just saying that made me think, oh, right, that would be fun to come up with like drag queen names.
Well, I already have one I came up with, which is mine. Should I ever? And it's the best one you will ever hear because it works on so many different levels. Obviously, now I've built it up, you'll be disappointed. It's Trish Fingers.
Oh, like that. I like that very much. So here's the thing. This is partly about being human, I guess. I don't know whether this will stay in. But so I have this kind of, and this opens a real can of worms because I am so, I don't know what the word is, so totally understanding of humans that I don't care how you identify.
Wonderful.
I don't not care, but
yes,
like it is a he, she, they, it, them, just doesn't like, it means nothing. Like fine. However, you can turn up at a date in a dress. I wouldn't blink an eye twice. I'd be like, okay, that's you. And that's what I love about you. So, but I'd love to do the drag queen thing, but the whole drag queen in a beard thing is just, I'm like, because the point is that they look great. I mean, some of them look like the most phenomenally attractive women, right?
Yes.
So beard kind of is like, oh, well, does that ruin it? Does it not? What are your thoughts, Trish?
It's Ms. Fingers to you.
I'm so sorry.
Well, that's more of a traditional drag view, but over the last 3 or 4 years, that actually has really evolved quite dramatically to the point where drag queens with a beard or chest hair on display have been in prominent drag shows and on TV as well. And then I guess the pinnacle, even though, like I'm sure you've seen, RuPaul's Drag Race it's the most visible version of drag. And this season in America has a trans man on it, which is so incredible that assigned female at birth, realized not him, has transitioned fully, now dresses up as a woman, which I just love how messed up and how it messes with your concept of what gender is and what we have to be. And that was another thing. He raised an amazing point that people, when they transition, are still held to traditional standards of beauty. So trans men are supposed to have to be super masculine, like beardy, butchy, chop down trees, and trans women are meant to be, oh, super feminine and light and all of that guff. He isn't. In his, where he's called Cade, when he's not as a drag queen, and he's super femme and soft, but he is a trans man. And it just, there's never been really anyone with such a platform like him. And it's so incredibly wonderful. He's called Gottmik, and as a drag queen. And Gottmik is the most incredible, versatile, stunning, artistic, funny, incredible performer as part of this whole character. I just obsessed.
I love that though, because that sort of ties in with, I guess, unintentionally what we wanted to talk about this month, which is this idea of who you are and who you identify with. So one of somebody texted me recently the picture of, now hang on, I'll have to look at my phone to get the context of this, otherwise it's going to be confusing for people listening, but because I'm terrible with famous people. I've lots of well-known friends, and because I've got lots of well-known friends, I don't really do the whole celebrity thing. I just don't identify with it.
I thought you meant you were a stalker. I'm terrible with famous people.
Well, I mean, you'd have to ask them that, I suppose.
We've all seen The Bodyguard.
Yeah. I don't need any of this, if I make you breakfast in the morning, I don't need any of this, how did you get in my house business?
A simple thank you will do.
Exactly, right. So this person on TV was in a dress. Hang on, here it is.
Is it Kid Cudi?
Yes, it is. Kid Cudi, that's it. So I had no idea who Kid Cudi was, right? So somebody I know texts me and says, with a picture of it, what do you think of this? And I said, what do I think of what? The dress, the pattern, the cut, a man in a dress? What do I think about what? And the question was, what do you think about a straight man dressing up in a dress? And I said, I think the bigger question is, look at the hideous dress. If you're going to pick a dress, at least pick a nice one. However, they kind of raised a really interesting point that they were offended by it, because this is a straight guy that gets praised for being in a dress. But if you were femme or unsure or gender fluid, or a man that kind of identified with having a she part of your gender personality, then if you were to walk down the street or turn up at an event in a dress, you might be mocked, ridiculed. And when I say might be, highly likely to be, based on experience. A friend of mine wore a dress, had been out recently, and he wore a dress and tried to get a cab home, and the cab guy called him a weird pufter and refused to pick him up, right? So it's real. Right. However, my point was, a man in a dress on TV is a great thing to see, because the more we see that, the more normal that becomes.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing broader is, of course, both of those things I'm talking about are devoid of emotion, because that straight guy wearing a dress has no emotional context or emotional connection to the dress or to the feminine thing that he's doing.
No.
It could be, I don't know, art, fashion, a political statement, whatever, but it doesn't mean anything. In the same way that, if you don't care for cats and you see a dead cat on the road, you might go, oh, that's a shame, it's a dead cat. But if you loved cats and saw a dead cat on the road, it would like ruin your week or something, So the emotional context is different for everybody.
Yeah.
But if you struggle with or have a conflict of gender, or feel passionately or understand whatever your current relationship is with gender, but you have that male and female relationship with your own gender identity, that's not an easy journey for you in the current social context that we have of this slightly heteronormative social society that we live in. And so it's a very different relationship for a guy wearing a dress, right? Because for you, it can be a painful thing for you to express who you really are. Like, does that sort of make sense?
Absolutely. But I think you're right. The key thing there is visibility. of anything. But equally, it still makes me sad that people go, "Oh, there's a man in a dress." Like, "Oh, I saw women in trousers yesterday." The horror! Like, it's clothing. It's all, as you say, that emotion and that meaning that we as humans, and sometimes terrible humans, infuse into what that means there and then.
Sure.
And there will be people who will have seen Kid Cudi's performance and gone, "Oh, he's gay," or he's trans now, or whatever. Like, people see a snapshot and take from that, because everyone has that lens they see through, so they have of their own experience. So using everything they've learned up to this point, when they saw him perform, that was what they'll use to interpret it. Some people can be a bit more, "Oh, there could be lots of meanings to this." Other people are a bit more black and white. But ultimately, I get what you're saying and what your friend said about, "Oh, it's just performative. He put on a dress to either, for whatever, to sell records or get talked about," versus a regular, in inverted commas, guy or whoever walking down the street who wasn't expected to wear a dress might get, as you said, as your friend, got shouted at or not picked up in a cab, because that hasn't been normalized sufficiently. So there are pros and cons to both. Yes, visibility for any minority or anything different is good, if it's good different, you know what I mean? Like, there are some things you don't need. Not everything needs visibility. But yeah, straight guys getting applauded for doing the bare minimum, like, no. But equally, we want allies.
Sure.
I don't want him to be. And to be honest, I know nothing about that's the story of why he wore the dress, other than people were talking about it. So whether it was a statement, whether he was doing it in support of, whether he's saying he's a trans ally, like, sure, I don't know.
I think it can only be a positive thing in as much that it encourages conversations like this, because there'll be people listening or watching that understandably don't know what to do with that information. That doesn't necessarily make them prejudiced, but we carry with us, who we are is formed because of all the people in our lives we've met and been influenced by, the history that we stand on, and the subtle social norms, with this wonderful conversation that's happening now about sort of subtle and subconscious racism. People being racist without them even really knowing that they're being racist or understanding how or why. For me, that's okay. Like, the racism's not okay, but the fact that they don't know is okay, because it encourages the conversation to make people think differently and look at yourself. I think we can be much better as a species and better humans by not just accepting our lot, not just saying, "Well, here I am, this is me," but being able to challenge yourself and think, "Oh, why do I think that? Why is that my opinion?" Or is there an alternative that opinion that I'd be equally quite happy or comfortable with? Which is how I think I've got to this place in my life where I just don't care. Like you could turn up. So years ago, I had a cocktail bar as a business, and one of the guys we employed was covered literally head to toe in tattoos. He had piercings everywhere, and I was very young, and the very first time I met him, I was genuinely, like, my initial instinct was, "Oh no, I'm gonna die. This is how I die, interviewing somebody for a job in a cocktail bar." And he was the most gentle soul you would ever meet. He had the most incredible customer service, the most amazing, but purely on an almost academic level, his expression of life and what he enjoyed was through artwork on his skin and piercings. Every single tattoo had a story, a meaning behind it. Every piercing, there was a reason, something that happened. His piercings were particularly incredible. Every single piercing he had many, he had the piercing done as a result of something emotionally painful in his life, to remind him of the fact that he'd pulled through it. Isn't that just it? And suddenly you're like, wow, now I want to see all of them. I mean, he told me where some of them were and you didn't want to see all of them, but it was, it's a really interesting thing that you sort of self-check yourself, because you're brought up that that's what the thugs and the bad people look like. Okay, kid, you be careful. You stay away from the dark alleys and the people in the leather jackets and the bars through the nose. and stay on this wholesome path over here, boy. You'll be fine. And you realize that, the wholesome path, that I remember I have to be very careful what I say, but let's just say that there's somebody I know that was raised in a very religious household, okay. Who, when they were young, was beaten with a hand and a belt for doing something wrong, or not getting up in time, or being late for church. So everything has context, right? I think the idea of questions like this, of us being able to ask and challenge ourselves in a non-aggressive way, Matt, and just having this conversation is just lovely, isn't it?
Very much so. Equally, to play devil's avocado, we are...
You mean advocate?
Do I?
Advocate.
Oh, I do love advocate. It's one of my favorite irregular drinks. Equally, we are sitting here in a very privileged position.
Aren't we just?
Okay, yes, we're a minority we are homosexuals. Sorry, spoiler alert.
And white.
That's the one thing that makes us a minority. Everything else about us, like the color of our skin, the fact that we've done pretty well. Or even just to dial it back, we've got a roof over our head. We've got a good camera that I'm connecting with you. We've got internet. All of these things are, yeah, sometimes
multiple pairs of.
Clearly. Which you're right, allows us to have this conversation. And on the other hand, I think more and more there's a responsibility on us to do what we can to continue to bring this conversation out wider, like we're doing now, but to raise and lift up and to question our own privilege and unconscious bias that we have, an unconscious advantage, like just the color of our skin saves us in so many situations.
Sure.
Like more and more that. And obviously that erupted last summer, finally brought to the forefront. And do you know what I really hate? The weaponization of the word woke, when people are trying to, usually people who don't want things to change, they use it like in the old version of, it's political correctness gone mad. That's exactly the same, i.e., I can't say the same old crap that I used to say and get away with, and people would laugh. Now I'm being challenged. And that's one of the greatest ways to put this that I heard was, when you're used to privilege, equality feels like oppression. So of course, as with these conversations come out, as trans people get greater platforming, not because they're here to force people to transition who wouldn't anyway, but just to remind people that they're just part of life.
Yeah, sure.
As are all minorities. And it makes the old guard uncomfortable, because it's the old traditional hierarchies are being usurped and unsettled, and quite right too.
It's kind of a bit like somebody belittling Anne Frank's oppression, isn't it? It's kind of like saying, belittling A, that she was Jewish, B, that she lost all of her family, C, that she had to hide in a cupboard. It's sort of, just because you can do something, it doesn't mean to say it's okay. I mean, it does make me smile when people argue about the fact that we can't say anything anymore, or I saw recently a discussion in a Facebook group it was horrific, with somebody who had a degree of responsibility and power for this organization, who asked the question. It was something like, is racism always a bad thing?
Sorry?
If it's fun racism, that's okay, isn't it? I mean, it was amazing. Somebody tweeted it like really publicly as well. And I thought, oh my God, you don't get it, do you? You just don't. Is homicide always a bad thing? Is the persecution of all Jewish people always a bad thing? You just like, what beggars belief, doesn't it? We are at the very core human, and I think always, when I'm challenged by something that I don't understand, I can't remember, we didn't say this last time, but it's not I don't know who to credit this to, but the sort of thinking or the phrase goes something like, it's an old sort of psychology foundation tenet that the things that we don't know enough about, so where we lack knowledge, we grow to fear. Yeah, we grow to fear. No, we grow to dislike. The things that we grow to dislike, we grow to fear. And the things that we grow to fear, we grow to hate. And there's this sort of gradual progression that all stems from not asking enough questions in the first place. So certainly for me, when I'm challenged by that, when I feel myself challenged, like if somebody, I remember the very first time somebody described themselves as gender fluid.
Right.
And I said, I don't really understand that. And I said to this guy, what does gender fluid mean for you? Because I'm guessing it means different things for different people, but I can't identify with that because I don't have enough information about it. And they explained it all to me. And I was like, oh, well, then I've got nothing to fear, worry about, or confuse myself about, because that like makes perfect sense if that's real for you, because it's a real struggle. So my head always goes to what must that person be experiencing? And what is the global distress right now for them where they have had to find a safe haven in order to live their life? And what does that look like in terms of scoping that out? And that might not relate to me, but it doesn't mean to say that it doesn't exist. It's real for them, right? Because most of these things are driven from pain or loss or confusion of not being able to fit in. And my immediate thing is sympathy. And I think how horrific that must be to not feel like you belong in life. Because I think to a degree, and I'm very careful about how I use this, I think to a degree, everybody in a minority group, and it's something I can relate to an extent, you know, pre-coming out, was absolutely in that space of this doesn't feel right for me. I can't fit in here. What am I experiencing? That kind of moment of challenge. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of us just want to belong. Sure. It's just that some people's way of belonging was by oppressing other people's, and that's gone on for too long. Some people's way of finding their tribe and their what they do and how they live and operate came at a cost, which of oppression and not allowing, again, out of unknown and fear and hatred, any phobia, essentially.
Well, that's been taught to us. We've seen that play out on global stages. You know, Hitler and his regime and Pol Pot, and I mean, any dictator who has caused oppression to another group of people en masse has given the world an example of being able to succeed by oppressing somebody else. And even subconsciously, that plays out as a role model of a degree.
And the thing is that it's never how people think it's going to be. It's never armies rolling in tanks to take over. It's creeping, pervasive, insidious undermining of minorities and groups to make the larger majority fear them. And that is why I'm such a vocal trans ally, because the language and rhetoric used against trans people now is exactly the same as was used against gay people over the last 50 years. Sure. Oh, they'll come in your bathrooms. Oh, they're predators. Oh, they're here to rape and molest and like be awful to you.
Sure.
And the best counterpoint, well, one of the best counterpoints I heard to that recently, just to put it in context, is if your fear is that straight men will identify as women to be able to use female bathrooms, then you're not worried about trans women. You're worried about straight men, of course, who make up the majority of the people who do the killing and the murdering and the awfulness.
Yes. We have to look at this lovely little transition today of the difference between the reality of doing something and the perception of why we want to do it, right? This came up in a conversation yesterday between us.
And the outcome as well, the discrepancy between how we think it should go and how it actually goes, and how that can undermine us as well if we're not prepared.
Now, I'm going to start you off on this because I know you've got a little bit of a bee in your boily bonnet. About some of the ways that, as a fitness expert, some of the ways that people portray the successes that you can have and why you should go on a certain journey with, for example, getting fit. But what I would say is that we should caution anybody listening that just like the conversation we've just had doesn't need to be just about gender or sexuality. The idea of two people having conflicting opinions about something or identifying with a particular situation is beautiful and wonderful and should be embraced. But the void in the middle can be an area of exploration and an opportunity to come together, or it can be no man's land where people fight and have war. And I think the difference is, you just have to decide what you want to do with that middle bit. And I think this whole project is about encouraging people to come together more, about saying, okay, you believe A, I believe B. That's a beautiful thing. It doesn't mean to say we can't be friends. It doesn't mean to say you can carry on believing in A and I'll carry on believing in B. And we don't even have to meet in the middle. We can just still exist together, and that's okay. Understanding. I was reminded, I had a CD that I found in a drawer the other day. It's a very long-winded introduction. Sorry, Matt. Yes. I know, right? Several years ago, I went to a funeral of a teacher of mine at school. And at the end, they gave everybody a copy of a CD with songs that he'd chosen to sort of reflect his life and the end of his life journey. It's got a picture of him and his signature on the inside. It's just beautiful. And I got it out because I wanted to download all of them onto my phone. And Jeremy Davis, is his name, was monumental in creating a sort of pastoral feel of our school that we went to. And his sort of signature motto was dignity, love, respect. That those three things should be the core of, and I've absolutely adopted that. Everything I do, I want to kind of to be an essence of those three things. So my point is that when you're now just about to talk a lot about fitness and this kind of fitness trajectory that is being pushed and manipulated and marketed, it doesn't have to be about fitness. It's about any long-term goal that you have created for yourself. Was what I just wanted to make that point before we start talking about other stuff, that people get this far and think, oh, this is all about sexuality and fitness. That doesn't relate to me. But it's the reason of what we're talking about, right? That's more relevant.
Very much so. And also I'd like to temper that with whatever gets people moving is a good thing.
Sure.
So that is straight back to fitness. But it's because...
Not necessarily, like, because you might not brand it as fitness, but you might,
you're right.
Going for a walk, you might think is not about fitness. It's about clearing your head or just moving.
Yeah. So I guess the pinnacle or the nadir of that sort of stuff is get beach body ready in 8 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's so much crap layered into that. Like, it sets it up that there's a time period when this will definitely happen, whatever. B, like, already it says you're not good enough.
Yeah, as you are.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, only recently I saw, and there are a plethora of these guys on the Twitter who are ripped, saying, "Oh, getting out of quarantine, got to work on my summer body." And I almost don't want to dive into that because it's been dissected before. And he may well have body dysmorphia, and he truly is unable to see that he has 9% body fat. But part of me is, he has 400,000 followers, and they're all like, yeah, oh God, yeah, me too. Oh yeah. And just that, again, it's that insidious, pervasive, you're not good enough to quite a significant chunk of potentially susceptible people. So that, but at the same time, if his thing got someone off the couch and they started doing a bit of fitness and started their own journey, like, there are worse things in the world, for example, than that.
There are, but I mean, I guess your point is interesting. I remember Fred Rogers. I'm a massive fan of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. That most people in the UK will have no idea what it is. But when I was working out in the States, I used to watch it every single morning. And he had such a profound effect on the way that I think about things.
He was a steeplejack, wasn't he?
A steeplejack?
No, I'm joking. It was Fred Hibner. Topical reference.
Oh,
from the 80s.
Totally missed that. Yeah. You have to remember, Matt, you're significantly older than I am, so a lot of references won't land. So he said, as part of a longer phrase, but ultimately the bit that's really important is, I like you just the way you are. and he used to sign. It was for kids, and he used to sign off every week, saying, you're important because of what you bring every single day, and I like you just the way you are. Now, I guess this is the point: is that while you quite rightly say, well, maybe there's a benefit to it, and it might prompt you to get up and moving, and that's not a bad thing. It also does put that the psychological drive, the reason that you're doing it is the more important thing. And that doesn't seem to be the focus. It is literally just, here's a short period of time that you've got to commit to, and here's this amazing goal that you're going to edge towards. And we can put it in context. As when I was saying to you, I've seen this 6 weeks to get a six-pack thing. And it wasn't about getting the six-pack for me. There was a very clear reason. I wanted to see, so there's an achievable goal that's clear. Everybody knows what that is, what it looks like. And here's this period of time. Let me go on that journey and see whether I get to that point. And that's more interesting to me, is do I or do I? I'm not bothered about the six-pack, but do I or do I not get to that point, and then dissect it and work out why not? But the starting point is the most important bit, isn't it? Is why are you doing this? Because that might not be the right journey for you to go on, or the right destination to aim for.
No, and then it almost certainly won't be as sustainable, because you're making that validation external. You're putting the approval and the success. Well, sorry, going back to less so your thing, but more the guy on Twitter. If you start because you think you need a summer body, that puts your validation and your approval and your success in everyone else's hands apart from your own. And you'll never be happy. I know that's quite a bold black and white statement, but if you only ever seek validation externally, you will never truly get it, and you'll never truly be happy. How do you feel about that?
But you're right, because validation, self-validation, comes from within. It's about, and that's a much bigger journey, which is, I think, the point here, is that the easy journey is always, what can I buy, or how much can I give someone else to do the work for me? That, weight loss tablets, spray tans, whatever, the instant
things, the pulse on your six-pack.
The TENS machine.
The Christian, and that's the thing, like unscrupulous celebrities like Cristiano Ronaldo, who advertises that, and doubtless was paid, I don't know, 10 million to flog those machines that pulse your abs 200 times a minute. Like, that isn't helping anyone. I refuse to believe that has a positive, beneficial impact on the world, other than on his bank balance.
Well, because of course, so what happens when you've got the six-pack? Does that suddenly cure your lack of self-validation internally?
That is exactly the point, and that's the question I ask people and my clients more and more. Okay, brilliant. What would you be able to do when you've got a six-pack that you can't do now? And people can't answer that.
Well, because it's driven because it's entirely visual. So you can have a strong core without having the definition of a six-pack, right? And the core is only, having just a strong core. I might be wrong, so jump in and tell me if this is going on. But my zero qualified, zero knowledge understanding
keep going. Keep
anatomy
digging.
and physiology is keep digging. There is 0 point in having just a strong core, because the core is there to work with upper body strength or lower body strength, or you're not going to you need other strength to support the core strength. Does that sort of make sense? So you'll have a better posture, I suppose, is all you'll get.
Absolutely. I was on one of my very first days in personal trainer school 800 years ago. I heard a great thing from a very wise elder of the profession, who said, someone else was asking about a strong core and why it was good, and he said, okay, you need a strong core because you can't fire a cannon from a canoe. And I was like, whoa, so wise, sensei.
Why is it that all the wise things are really difficult to understand?
Because, imagine a cannon in a canoe. It would just push down into the water and the ball wouldn't come out of the cannon.
Yes.
So
why have you put a cannon on a canoe?
I think you're missing the point here.
Oh, am I? Okay.
But tell you what, we'll film it for next episode. You're like the new Tomorrow's World.
I'm sensing that I'm going to be the one in the canoe, right?
You're Judith Han, yes. I'll be Maggie Philbin. The strong core connects your upper and lower body and allows you to do things more, better, faster, quicker. Yeah.
Sure. So, you know, your point is that you get the six pack, but what you're
still
hoping
sad.
is that people, yeah, well, exactly that. You're hoping that you'll have a place A to show it off, B that you'll get the validation, C that that validation brings a sense of self-worth or self-value,
acceptance to a club.
Yeah, absolutely.
Physically and metaphorically.
And none of that is sustained because you get it. It's like buying something, you know, it's like shopping for something because you feel you need that in your life to fulfill a void. You buy that and you realize it doesn't fulfill the void. You have to buy something else and buy something else and keep doing it subconsciously. So you get your six pack and then what? You're right. You know, you haven't addressed the real reason why you want to do it, which is possibly that you have core unmet needs in your life or detachment issues or I don't know, low self-esteem or low self-worth, which is even worse than self-esteem. You know, esteem is I don't think we explained this last time, but it's a really important thing for any human being to understand that self-worth and self-esteem are not interchangeable. Self-esteem is based on other people's impression of you or their validation of you. So you're doing really well, Matt. You look great, Matt. That's all self-esteem because I'm giving you that. But self-worth comes from within, and that's the bit that you have complete control over. Self-esteem, you don't have any control over because you're relying on other people to add laudits onto you, you know. And so self-worth is much more powerful, and a six-pack isn't going to do that, right?
No. And again, massive caveat. If you want a six-pack, please work as hard as you want to get one. Sure. But don't ladle in, I don't know what he'd be ladle in extra belief. And if it turns out there are some people who only accept you when you have a six-pack, they're awful people who won't hang around because if they're that fickle. And I don't believe that actually is a real thing. So occasionally you see people post screenshots of mean conversations on Grindr or whatever, but saying, oh no, you're too fat or you're too femme or anything like that. But they have their own issues and they are not a club you want to be accepted to.
Sure.
And to your self-esteem and self-worth, I heard that described as it's human being versus human doing. The human doing is the one who you get praised for things you do. And there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but unless you build your self-worth solely on things you've done. And that's like when you're at school, you learn, you get praised if you do things well, and if you don't progress and you have to do them again and you're not a good person or you're not as good. And we internalize that I must do things. But when you bring it into I believe in myself, then you're the human being, a good person, living your life how you want to. And you're absolutely right. Those two different ways of looking at it.
And I guess that's transferable, right? This is the thing that I love about this exploration of what it means to be human, is that if you set yourself a goal, that makes you feel quite powerful because you've achieved something in itself, that you've got yourself a goal to aim towards. And we're very goal driven as a species. The goals are extremely powerful, very, very useful. As long as they're clear, considered, they have an objective timeline, a deadline, etc., etc. But and you might then give yourself, you know, a timeline as well. So I'm going to 6 weeks. I'm going to break it down. Week 1, I'll do this. Week 2, week 3, whatever. That's cool. But then I think the real work happens because you need to get that out your system, because that's the thing that's in the back of your mind going, oh, I really want to do this thing, and this is how I'm going to do it. I liken it sometimes to decorating. So you sit down in your living room and you can see exactly how this room is going to look. You've picked the cushions, you know the curtains you're going to go for, the color, you've got the Pharaoh and ball things circled, you've got the little number copied so you can go to B&Q and get it done a lot cheaper. Don't think that it happens, doesn't it? Come on. So
there goes the sponsorship.
Yeah, with Pharaoh and ball, yeah. So you in your head, you can see it exactly how you want this space. You've got it. You think, I've got some time off next Saturday. I'll do it in the evenings. It's all there. What you haven't worked out is that you've got to take everything out the room and then cover everything with dust sheets and then mask everything and then sand everything down and then, do that washy stuff, the yellow stuff, sugar soap or whatever it is. It is a hell of a lot more stuff to get to before you can even start. But there's no point doing that without getting that excitement out of your brain and, the sort of stuff that clouds your vision. And so when you've worked out what you want to do, whatever your goal is, whatever your objection in life, and it might be in life, it could be to do with literally anything, spiritual, financial, emotional, relationship, whatever. The third part of that journey is, why am I doing it? I think, which is the sitting down and just with a cup of tea and a biscuit or whatever, or just on your own, or just losing yourself on your commute and thinking, okay, what is the reason that I'm doing this? Where do I want to be? How differently do I want to feel at the end of this? And as a behaviorist, we call that terminal behavior. So what's the end result that you're looking for? But the behavior bit's really important, right? Because what is it going to give you? What's it going to offer you? What's going to drive you? Because it might not be that you need to decorate your lounge. It might not be that you need to ditch your relationship. It might not be that you need a cat. There might be something else that once you understand what this core unmet need is, it might be attainable or achievable somewhere else. And we don't, I think, from what I've seen in my experience, both in business and with individuals, and in my own crisis in life, I've written very publicly about existential crises and things I've been through. We don't have access to that knowledge or that experience nearly enough. It's almost like we're frightened of it.
Well, I think you've just answered the question I was just about to ask you, which is then, why are so many people afraid or reticent at making actual goals? Because you just said, and you're right, goals can be very powerful, especially if they're the sort of the smart ones and you do have more of a framework for them. But so many people don't have goals. And I wanted to ask you, I've got some theories on that, but I wanted to throw that little nugget your way, see if you wanted to gnaw on it for a minute or two.
Gnaw on it?
That's with a G.
Oh, well, why don't people have goals was the thing.
Why do people have goals, but what's stopping them setting that? Why don't they set goals?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think fear assumes a conscious understanding of the thing that you're about to engage in, or, and also presumes knowledge. Because you can't fear something if you don't know anything about it. You can show a scary mask to a baby and they don't react because they've no context for that. It's just a face. It's just features.
Yep.
But as soon as we have context, that when it's a bit like Jaws, the music to Jaws, the doo-dum, doo-dum, the cello, it doesn't have context unless you understand that slow, repetitive noise comes with fear or drama or tension or whatever. So, it's like you can be watching a film. If you don't like, I hate horror. I hate anything scary, anything that ruins my happiness equilibrium. I hate was it 13 Years a Slave, 12 Years a Slave? Which one was it? How long was he a slave for?
12.
Well, thanks. Probably felt like 13. So 12 Years a Slave, I watched about 20 minutes and I was just like, do you know what? The racism, which I just cannot stand other people being in any way horrible to other human beings. It really, 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 really distresses me. I just couldn't watch it. But my point is, say you don't like horror films and you're watching the TV and that music starts straight away. Oh, no, I won't like this. Can we turn it over? Oh, it sounds creepy, or straight away. So that context is really important. So without that context, it's driven by not that very point, the fact that you don't have the understanding of why a goal is important or why it's not important, and you don't have a clear understanding of why you're doing something. Because with a clear understanding, it creates a sense of purpose and drive, and therefore with that, a desire to plan that out and have this very structured goal, which of course in turn presumes that you have an understanding of the difference between where you are right now and where you want to be. And those two things are critically important as well. They sound so simple. There's a third bit to that. I used to run work. You remember when we used to see people physically
It rings a bell.
Yeah, no, Google it. But I used to run whole day workshops on 3 letters. That was kind of my
BLT. Sorry.
I would sit in front of 300 people and say, "This over the next 6 hours, we're going to explore 3 letters. One is A, one is B, and one is C. So where are we now? Where do we want to be? And what's the difference? So what's the consequence of going from where you are to where you want to be? And how does that whole journey map out and look for us?"
Right.
So I think without that, you don't know that you need a goal.
Or people have learned to believe that they don't deserve anything.
Sure.
They don't. They should be happy with their lot. I hear that a lot from clients.
I'm going to stop you there 2 seconds. You get that a lot from clients who are, and I'm going to put this out there, white and middle class and English.
Yes, correct. Mystic Meg, carry on.
No, you carry on.
Actually, not always middle class. Some had, and I hate the use of those class terms, but it obviously gives some kind of, you can sort of conjure up. Some had from working class, lower income families that, it's good enough for us. We didn't go to university. Why should you? Like from the parents, and it's good enough for us. We didn't go to university. We're happy. Look at this. You don't need to. Like that fear that someone doing something different to what they did, they'll lose them because they'll become a different person, which is unfounded. If it's family,
goes right back to what you were saying at the beginning, though, Matt. Sorry to interrupt. That fear of somebody doing something different to your own sphere of comfort, which is why a man wearing a dress is such a poignant thing, because it's got nothing to do with the man in the dress. It's about the fact that it pushes you into an area of absolute discomfort in your own comfort zones, because it shakes everything you believe to be true, because you have such a narrow understanding of what is true or possible.
Yes. Brilliant. Podcast success completed. Close laptop.
It's a short one this month, folks. We'll see you again next month.
We've answered that. Yes, brilliant. That is absolutely. But then it just is sad that the parents and the generation before inherited that. We won't wish for anything greater than our lot. This is what this has been fine for us, so it's going to be fine for you, and fine for you, and fine for you. Yeah. I guess the internet and seeing the world and realizing there are so many more opportunities has allowed people to start stepping out of what's expected of them. And that again, that whole links to expectations and who you should be and who you want to be, and the discrepancy, and will you upset people or lose people? And I mean, it sends your moral compass spinning.
But yes, it does. But that's okay. It doesn't mean to say it shouldn't be a conversation that we don't have. We don't have more regularly, and we don't open ourselves to. Right?
Agreed.
I just think it's okay to not feel okay. And if you say, well, I don't want to feel okay. I want to, because of probably almost certainly, almost likely some sort of childhood trauma, but sometimes PTSD. And these are generalized terms, but I'm going on statistically correct behavioral and psychological therapeutic models. You would not want to feel uncomfortable or would not want to feel outside of your comfort zones. You don't want that disrupted, because that normally has a negative connotation. Then I think the wider conversation just has to be about maybe understanding, or a global sense of understanding, so that you doesn't have to impact your own comfort zones. That's okay. If you don't want to go on that journey or understand, it's fine. But just a realization that someone else has a different comfort zone, a different objective, a different way of doing something is absolutely fine. Fred Rogers has a lovely phrase that I believe isn't his. He used to have in his wallet a piece of paper folded up with a phrase written by somebody else. And to paraphrase the phrase, because I don't have the book now, it's in the other room. It says, it is something along the lines of, there is no one you cannot learn to love when you know their story.
Oh,
isn't it wonderful? And you think, yeah, I kind of get that. It's like I became very interested. It's a very, very difficult thing to talk about, but very briefly, because I think this, we are human. And this podcast has to touch on everything that it is to be human. I don't think we can gloss over anything. I think it's fundamentally unfair and patronizing. I became very interested in the psychology of and current research into paedophilia about 5 years ago, because it was the most random piece of research I just suddenly came across. I was like, what the hell? And it was understanding paedophilia. So the current understanding of psychologists and neuroscientists and other people studying this is that paedophilia begins with at birth, caused by damage in vitro by drinking, smoking, etc., by the mother, and it creates a distortion, a problem, like a literal hardwiring in your brain, because they've seen that in. Anyway, I'm not going to touch into this too much. That's not what I want this to be about. But my point is that if you punish a paedophile by sending them to prison, because they have a genetic or a biological condition, it's the equivalent of punishing a diabetic in prison. It's not going to. They're not going to get any better. And then when you look at statistically, those people who commit sex crimes, particularly paedophilia, a very high percentage, we're talking high 70 plus 80%, were subject to sex crimes as a child themselves.
Right.
So at no point am I saying that paedophilia is right, understandable, acceptable. Of course I'm not. What I'm saying is it's very interesting when you track it back, that person is playing out things that happened to them when they were younger. And that suddenly becomes a much bigger story, rather than just throwing stones at somebody and saying, that's not right, or you did that wrong. And you don't have to agree with anything they did, but understanding, I think, brings us closer to dignity, love, and respect.
Yes, and with any sort of abuse stories, that comes back to the saying, hurt people hurt people. But when I didn't know that about the research about them having in vitro issues from parents who smoke and drink, for example, when you then layer in, and I guess brain damage of a certain
form,
that God, I don't know what to do with that information.
Right, but you don't have to. That's okay. And I didn't want this shouldn't be because it's such an emotive subject and a divisive subject. I mean, that really is boundaries of getting people to be more understanding, right? But my point is that is a very interesting. One of the challenges that they write about in the research is that this is possibly something. Their concern is it's possibly something we may never understand, despite the fact it being such a significant problem for our species. It's much bigger than people think it is.
Oh, God.
And the problem is society's utter our ability to shut that out and not want to talk about it, not want to know about it, to just punish them and put them away and forget about it because it's so heinous, means that getting funding to do research is so difficult, because nobody can stand up and say, yes, we're giving £300,000 to these people to investigate more about paedophilia, right? Because it would create such huge social division, I guess, and also attack, that it's very difficult to encourage people to want to fund something like that. There's a wonderful book. It wasn't going to be my book of the month this month. That's upstairs as well. It's called We Are Our Brain. And it's by Professor Dick somebody or other, I forget. But there are a couple of books called We Are Our Brain. But if you go on Amazon, We Are Our Brain, Professor Dick somebody or other, and I forget who that. I think his surname begins with an S, but I'll pop it in the show notes. But that does bring us sort of swiftly on to Book of the Month. Are you happy to do Book of the Month?
Yeah, it's Dick Swab.
That's it, Swab. That's it, SWAAB. Check you out. Ordered. A BlackBerry you just flashed.
It's my bold BB, as Tiny Temper raps about, which he's probably quite embarrassed about having in a song.
I don't know what that is.
Bold
literally, I know
BlackBerry.
nothing about what you just said. Tiny Temper, blonde BB. I'm so uncool. It is untrue.
No, it was definitely a Android, no buttons phone.
Oh, okay, fine. It looked like it when you moved it across. It obviously had the keyboard on it, and it looked just like a battery, a BlackBerry.
Ding! Yes, it's how I do my Murder She Wrote in 2021 on my little pop-out keyboard. Did you get that reference? Did you?
I had a Nokia communicator. You know, that was like literally like the size of a house brick, and half of it folded up and was a screen, and the rest was a QWERTY keyboard.
Don't get me started. I had all the fun Nokias. The turn of the century. I had that one. I had the one with the QWERTY keyboard with the square screen in the middle.
I didn't like that.
Oh, fair enough. I had another one which was shaped like a croissant, and it had the square in the middle, and it had keyboard on one side and numbers on the other. It was amazing. That was the first with MP3s and music on, and that was like going on LimeWire and downloading a song that then put a virus on your family's computer for 6 days. Oh, but it was worth it.
Yeah. But I got it for free.
Yeah, exactly.
I went on my friend's BlackBerry because I just couldn't understand the idea of BlackBerry, and I tried. I had a little go on her Pearl thing, but I wasn't very good at it. But
are there rights available to that story?
Sort of metaphor there, I suppose, isn't it? Right. Anyway, so Matt, I've got my book of the month,
right.
But quick flash story of my life. But I'm going to hand over to you because I've been doing a lot of talking. So I want your book of the month first.
Okay, book of the month. Book of the month. Just trying.
As I said before we started recording, you don't have to do that.
It's giving the people what they want. Okay, my book of the month is by James Clear, and it's called Atomic Habits. Socrates said, "Oh no, I should have edit this so I look really slick and smart."
Apparently,
yes. Oh God! Hold on. Can I actually Google the quote? I'm going to because it explains it all.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, particularly if you're just about to make it up, then I think Googling it probably is the better thing to do.
It was Aristotle. Same, but different.
They were buddies, though. I'm sure they shared a lot of the same information and thoughts.
Yes. So this is relevant. So the book is all about how we build habits and loads of understanding how they work. And I'll come on to that in a second. But the quote from Aristotle still is, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit."
Very good. Beautiful. I'm glad you Googled that because I sort of sense, having got to know you quite well, that you probably would have fluffed that up. So that's good.
Yes. So habits just make life easier, and we have them without even knowing that we bothered to create them, like brushing your teeth, like getting up in the morning, like eating, anything, drinking water, going for a walk, anything you want is a habit. And here's the funny thing: things like being late is a habit, which people wouldn't always see, but it absolutely is something you do regularly that is ingrained in you. Doesn't mean you can't change it, but it's a habit. Obviously, smoking is a habit, and people have chosen to start that, but being late also, anything like that is a habit. So, but this book is so wonderful because of how it breaks down the psychology and the understanding of what a habit is. And then piece by piece, it's one of the most practical, because I know last month I talked about You Were a Badass, which is less practical in terms of personal development. It's a bit more woo-woo, but I love it. But this is so practical in terms of starting and building habits, and also using that to stop bad habits that you want to get out of as well. And it's brilliantly written. I listened to the audio version as well, and it's written and it's read by the author James Clear, and he's got a brilliant website. And it's just, if you do one thing this month, use that to develop your habits, because life just flows the more habituated the things we want are.
He's right.
Thanks.
Like that. So I'm not going to do my book of the month because I'll be really honest. You did email me and say, I'm going to use this book of the month. And I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't click the link. I was like, that's cool.
It's not the same.
It's not the same, but it is called The Power of Habit.
Stop it.
By a different author, Charles Duhigg, Why We Do What We Do and How to Change. But it's, it has, I always judge the success of a book by how many ears how many ears? How many ears the author has. I've got that one there by Van Gogh. It's not as good. No, by how many pages I've dog-eared, and this one is really well referenced. There are so many dog-eared pages there, but let's not confuse things. I'll come back to this another day. So we'll use your book as the habit one, and my book of the month will be "We Are Our Brain" by Dick Swab, because I think it offers literally right from birth and in vitro all the way through our lives. It helps you better understand why biologically we do and think the things that we do because of how our brain has developed and the things that happened in our womb, not in our womb, when we were in a womb, or indeed not in a womb.
Yep.
So I think there's a very interesting, I think everybody will find it really insightful. And if you've struggled with something about, I don't know, you or your personality, or even if you haven't struggled, I think there would be a very interesting insight into, I wonder if that's because of the way that my brain is wired, or certain things that happen to our brain because of environmental factors or biological factors as well.
Amazing.
Pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Matt Boyles, I've really enjoyed this month.
Oh, thanks. Me too. Can I just also, last month we,
because it sort of sounds
disgruntled of Tunbridge Wells, right?
Sorry, can I just?
Can we change the billing so my name comes first?
Yes, I'm not precious about that. Why don't we really mess it up and make it completely even, and we'll just do it by Matt Rose and Jez Boyles.
Perfect. That wasn't even what I wanted to, but now I've got my way. Last month we talked about the duality of what it is to be a human, and I love that we can be, and I mean the royal we to mean the whole world, not just you and me. You can be super highbrow and super learny and push ourselves and challenge ourselves and have these deep, amazing debates. And then also, I have to get this out of my head. The author of the book you mentioned is Dick Swab.
Yes. Have you got it out of your system now?
No, I'm just thinking about swabbing.
Yeah.
It's going to stay with me all day.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah. I suspect that's why he added an extra A. I suspect his surname probably isn't Swab. But then I once in A&E, when I was doing some training in A&E in hospital, I worked with a consultant called Dr. Death.
Did he put an apostrophe between the E and A?
Yes, and pronounced Diath. Yeah.
Yes. I've heard of that before, but never of a doctor. Wow.
Yeah. Dr. Antonio, I think his Christian name was Diath. Yeah.
Wowzers.
Yeah, cool, right? I mean, you'd see that on your notes, and you're like, oh, well. Tell nice the kids I love them. Any questions? Well, I did, Doctor. I was going to ask what the sort of success rate was, but just having a little look at your name badge, I think probably I'm not.
I only know I've never met a Diath, but I remember one of my grandmothers telling me about she knew a Diath, and then that was also connected to other family friends who we were all talking about people's names. This is also about being human and like, I don't want to be known as Dr. Death, so I'm going to be called Dr. Diath. And their surname was Sidebottom, but they pronounced it Sidbottom.
No, they didn't.
They sort of squashed the vowels.
That's like when I pronounce like when there's birds outside. I just think it's funny because it sounds a bit sort of posh that you do bird spotting. So I say, oh look, there's a chaffinch. I like the idea of changing words around so they sound a bit different.
Yeah, lovely.
So listen, this has been nice. I think the takeaways for today are that you can join us on social media at that Jez Rose. No, let's do that again. You can join us on social media at that Jez Rose or at Fitter You Global.
10 points.
Thank you. You'll probably want to do Fitter You Global first because there's a bit more going on there and he's got more followers. But
it's not about followers. Jez.
No, it's not. I don't really understand it, I'll be honest. And I had that weird thing where it sort of fluctuates between 2,704 to 2,693 or something. And there's that kind of weird, and I'm like, why did the same amount of people keep unsubscribing or whatever they do? So I just sort of stopped looking at it because I was like, that's weird. My math brain.
It's just me messing with you. Follow. Follow.
You decided that you would set up 6 or 9 social media accounts. Follow.
Catfish.
Anyway, I've really enjoyed this exploration today.
Same.
If it has left you with some questions or some interesting things that you'd like to explore more, I think we'd love to hear from you on social media. Would be not, Matt?
Oh, very much so. I live for it.
And
God, that sounded sarcastic, but I do love genuinely hearing from people, so please do.
Sarcastic. We do. Can I just apologise for my co-host? We do genuinely want to hear Human of the Month, don't we?
Yes.
I think that's a lovely thing.
There weren't any. No one did anything good in the last 4 weeks, so that's why there's not one on this cast.
So the idea being that you can nominate or name check them on this podcast just to sort of start bringing a little bit of love and a little bit of loveliness about, to nominate people another human being who've just done something really nice. And it could be that they said something to you that was particularly nice, that they wrote a little note to you that made you feel good, that they, you found out they've been doing some volunteering or something, or they're just lovely. Maybe it's, there's somebody that's always there for you, could be a best friend or something. I think it's really nice to share the idea that there are good people that do good things all around us. And that's nice inspiration for all of us to be better human beings.
Beautifully put.
Have a lovely month if I don't speak to you before.
I mean, we probably will, but you too.
Get out of jail free card.
Thanks, Jez. What a lovely chat that was. Well put to rights.
Say goodbye, Matt.
Goodbye, Matt.
See you next month, everybody. Bye-bye.